Have you ever wondered why certain content appears in your life exactly when you need it most? Perhaps this video showed up for you after a tough day. Maybe it emerged in a moment of doubt, fatigue, or confusion. Or perhaps you can't identify the reason, but felt a strange urge to click, as if something inside you recognized that there was a message here waiting to be heard. Jung would call this synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence, a meeting between the external world and the secret need of your soul. It has nothing to do with algorithms. It has everything to do with psychic destiny. You are not seeing this by chance. And if inside you already feel that you have reached a point where you can no longer continue as you are, then this video is not entertainment. It is a mirror, an oracle, a warning. The feeling you carry, that vague discomfort, that growing emptiness, that anguish that seems to come from nowhere, is the way your psyche has found to say, enough. The previous phase is over, and you can no longer hide from yourself. What you feel is not weakness, it is not failure, it is not common confusion. It is a turning point, a saturation of your current life setup. The mask you wear no longer fits your face. The roles you play are becoming prisons. And no matter how much you try to rationalize, distract yourself, pretend that everything is fine, the truth continues to growl inside. It is the soul pushing you toward change. Not just any change, but an inevitable, profound, and non-negotiable change. The rupture between who you have been until now and what is trying to emerge. Jung said that these moments are not products of chance. They are calls to individuation, summons from the soul for you to start living authentically. But here's the cruelest detail. Almost no one responds right away. Most resist. They struggle to hold on to the old. They try to fix what should be left to die. And that's where the suffering intensifies. Because everything that no longer serves, when forcibly maintained, turns into pain, into illness, into depression, into self-sabotage. Not because life is wrong, but because you are refusing to evolve. Evolution does not happen in moments of comfort. The butterfly does not emerge in a blooming garden. It bursts out of a tight cocoon. In the same way, your new identity is being generated now, amidst confusion, doubt, and fear. And perhaps this video is one of the first external signs that this process has already begun. You don't need to understand everything now, nor know exactly what to do. What you need is to recognize you can no longer continue as you are. This is the starting point of your turning point. So here's an invitation, or perhaps an ultimatum. Stop looking for answers outside and start listening to what is screaming inside you. If you clicked on this video hoping for clarity, you might find something more valuable, a confrontation. Because sometimes the greatest healing does not come from the right answer. It comes from the right question. And the question is, are you ready to let die who you pretended to be? Have you ever had the feeling that the universe is trying to tell you something? As if certain words, people, songs, symbols, and even videos keep appearing in your path, as if they want to wake you up from a trance. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, and a causal principle where external events coincide with deep internal states of the psyche. Synchronicity is neither magic nor superstition. It is a language, the language of the unconscious. For Jung, the psyche is not just a passive reflection of the world, it is active. It organizes, creates, and, when necessary, shouts. And when you reach a point of internal saturation, where the soul can no longer tolerate the character you are playing, the unconscious begins to orchestrate encounters, signs, significant coincidences. Because words spoken by friends are no longer enough. Rational advice does not penetrate. Then reality itself begins to bend to deliver the messages that your conscious mind insists on ignoring. It is when you start to see the same theme repeated in books, movies, videos. Different people start to say things in the same tone. You dream of strange symbols. You feel an irrational urgency to change cities, end a relationship, quit your job, start something new, even without a logical reason. It's as if something greater is pulling you out of inertia. And it is. Synchronicity is not just an external phenomenon. It is the reflection of an internal collapse. Your psyche is tired of waiting for your consciousness. Jung asserted that synchronicity only appears strongly when there is something unconscious trying to emerge. When the old life narrative has run out and the unconscious begins to move, like an autonomous force, towards a new path. But this new path does not come with a map or guarantees. That's why the rational mind tries to discredit the signs. It tries to classify them as coincidence, impression, silly feeling. But if you pay attention, you will notice that there is a pattern, that life is trying to reposition you. And here is the most crucial point. When you ignore these signs, synchronicity stops whispering and starts shouting. Anxiety increases. The body gets sick. Dreams turn into nightmares. Emotions explode. Everything that was trapped begins to force its way out. And the more you resist, the more painful the transition becomes. Because it's not just about seeing the signs, it's about having the courage to follow them. To trust that if life is showing you this video, this theme, this truth, it's because you are being called to cross the threshold. But what threshold is that? And what happens when you decide to cross or decide to resist? In the next section, we will explore what Jung called enantiodromia, the psychic movement of rupture, the collapse of the previous direction, and the inevitable birth of its opposite. Because when you suppress who you really are for too long, what was repressed comes back with full force. And that's when everything begins to transform. Are you ready to face this process? If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. There comes a moment in life when everything seems to remain the same on the outside, but inside, something begins to crack. You wake up, fulfill your tasks, pretend normalcy, but the soul no longer cooperates. The places that once comforted you now bore you. Conversations feel empty. The people around you continue to see you as they always have, but you already know you are no longer that person. And the worst part, you still don't know who you are becoming. This is the beginning of the turning point. It's not dramatic. It doesn't start with a breakup, a dismissal, a loss. It starts quietly, like an uncomfortable doubt that won't go away. A chronic dissatisfaction, seemingly without cause. You even try to convince yourself that everything is fine. After all, nothing serious has happened. But internally, you feel something has died and wasn't announced. Life goes on, but you can no longer participate in it with the same presence. It's like being in a play where they forgot to give you the new script. Jung described this process as the initial stage of psychological transformation. The point where the ego begins to realize it can no longer sustain the old narrative. The psychic energy that supported your roles, choices, and patterns begins to drain. It's what he called saturation. You have reached the limit of the character, the limit of the mask. And the more you try to keep the old functioning, the more exhausted you feel, because what you are trying to resurrect is already dead. This phase is marked by contradictions. You feel tired without effort, sadness without reason, confusion without clear questions. You seek pleasure, but nothing satisfies. You try to rest, but find no peace. The mind spins in circles, and the body begins to carry the weight of what the soul can no longer bear. To the outside world, you may still be functioning, but inside, the implosion has already begun. You are no longer living. You are sustaining an illusion out of pure inertia. It is at this point that most people seek distraction, more work, more social media, more commitments, more anything that numbs what is emerging. But none of this works for long, because the turning point demands presence. It requires courage to face discomfort as a sign, not as a problem. Discomfort is the announcement that the old is crumbling, and the crumbling is necessary, because every reconstruction begins with ruin. But what happens after the ruin? When the old version of yourself finally collapses, what emerges in its place? The answer lies in the movement that Jung called enantiodromia, the inevitable psychic reversal. When everything you have been repressing begins to return, when the opposite takes the place of the persona. In the next part, we will dive into this process, the collapse of unilaterality, the birth of the opposite, and why you have no control over it. Are you ready to see what the psyche holds when you refuse to listen to it? The psyche has its own survival mechanisms, and one of them is enantiodromia, a complex word of Greek origin, which literally means running to the opposite. For Jung, this was not a poetic metaphor. It was a psychic law, an inevitable principle of internal balance. Whenever you maintain a one-sided psychological attitude for too long, that is, live trapped in a rigid way of being, feeling, or thinking, the psyche begins, silently, to prepare the emergence of the opposite. And this opposite does not emerge gently. It erupts. It explodes. It destroys whatever is necessary to restore balance. If you have spent your life negating yourself to please others, there comes a moment when you can no longer bear to say yes when you want to scream no. If you have always lived in rationality, ignoring feelings, there will be a point where the repressed emotion will swallow you. If you have built your identity around the image of success, perfection, and control, the psyche will lead you, through pain if necessary, to experiences of vulnerability, failure, or loss. Not as punishment, but as correction. Enantiodromia is the internal mechanism of the soul saying, "You have gone too far in one direction, now let's go the other way." And the most disconcerting thing is that this does not depend on your conscious will. No matter how much you try to maintain the old balance, when saturation is reached, the reversal begins. You find yourself taken over by unexpected impulses, thoughts that no longer fit your previous identity, emotions that challenge your logic. It's as if another version of you is trying to emerge from the depths. This opposite version is not your enemy. It is your forgotten half. What has been rejected, silenced, repressed. The shadow, the intuition that was traded for reason, the individuality that was sacrificed for conformity. And now all of this returns urgently to be integrated. Jung saw this as part of the individuation process, the birth of a more whole, more true, less divided human being. But for this to happen, you need to go through the collapse. You need to allow the old you to die. Many people fiercely resist enantiodromia. They try to maintain the old direction with more effort, more control, more denial. But this only prolongs the suffering, because the psychic movement has already begun. And the more you try to hold on to the old, the more violent the force of the new will be. The question is not whether the reversal will happen. The question is how you will deal with it, with rigidity or surrender, with resistance or listening, and how to listen to this process, how to recognize the signs that the turning point is no longer a future possibility, but a present reality. This is what we will talk about in the next part, the concrete signs that Jung identified as indicators that your soul has already begun the crossing, symbolic dreams, synchronicities, loss of identity, and an emptiness that no achievement can fill. Pay attention. Perhaps you are already experiencing all of them. When the psyche decides it's time to change, it doesn't send an email. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't schedule a convenient time to talk. Instead, it acts. And it acts with a symbolic intelligence that, for those who know how to listen, is impossible to ignore. Jung dedicated his life to observing these signs, expressions of the unconscious trying to break through the rigidity of consciousness. And what he discovered is that every true turning point carries with it 4 unmistakable types of manifestations. Signs that you don't choose to see. You need to see them because they impose themselves on your experience as truths that refuse to be silenced. The first sign is dreams, with symbols of death and rebirth. You may dream that you are naked in public, that you lose teeth, that houses collapse, that something dies, including you. For the unconscious, these symbols are not destructive. They are processes of transition. The collapsing house is your old identity crumbling. Nakedness is the revelation of your true self, exposed after the fall of masks. Death in dreams, far from being a grim omen, is a call for rebirth. The life you were living no longer serves you, and your unconscious wants you to accept that. The second sign is increasingly frequent synchronicities. People appear out of nowhere with messages that seem tailor-made for you. A book finds you. A video like this appears at the exact moment. A casual conversation gives you an answer you didn't even know you were looking for. Jung saw in these moments a rupture between time and causality, an instant where the external world bends to reflect the internal state of the soul. When synchronicities intensify, it's because the unconscious is trying to guide your crossing. The third sign is the loss of identification with your old roles. You look at your work, your relationships, your routine, and feel as if you are playing a character who no longer believes in their own lines. What once gave you belonging now oppresses you. The social functions you occupied start to sound false, limiting. You try to maintain the performance, but your body doesn't cooperate. Your speech hesitates, your energy plummets. The role has become a prison, and the soul wants freedom. The fourth sign is the most disorienting, a deep dissatisfaction with no clear external cause. Everything may seem right on the outside, financial stability, recognition, health. But inside, the void grows. Nothing fills it. No compliment is enough. No achievement brings peace. And this is not clinical depression. It is the existential void that precedes the birth of the new self. It is the fertile ground of transformation. But for the rational mind, this void is frightening. Because there is no explanation, no clear symptom. Just a silent certainty that it can't go on. These signs are not meant to be resolved. They are meant to be heard. They don't want your quick response. They want your surrender. And if you recognize them, it's because the psyche has already made the decision. The old self is dying. The new has not yet been born, and you are on the threshold. But how to cross this threshold? How to act when you still don't know who you are or where to go? In the next section, we will explore what Jung called psychological death and the process of consciously navigating this turning point. You will learn what to do and what not to do when your soul is undergoing deep transformation. Because there is a path, and it begins with the courage not to flee from the void. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. There comes a point where it is no longer about understanding, but about surviving. When the turning point fully sets in, your life enters suspension. The old no longer works, the new has not yet arrived, and all that remains is a psychic landscape in ruins. Here, many despair. They try to rebuild what can no longer be sustained. They seek quick solutions, shortcuts, distractions. But the truth is brutal. This moment demands that you die, not physically, but symbolically. The version of you that sustained your identity until now needs to be undone, so that a new one can be born. And this psychological death, if embraced with courage, can become the most powerful portal of your life. Jung insisted that no process of deep transformation is possible without an ego collapse first. It is not about destroying who you are, but about letting go of the structures you confused with your essence. The titles, the narratives, the masks, everything that was built to please, to protect, to fit in, needs to be released. And that hurts, because even what suffocates us offers a form of security. Letting go is like releasing a buoy in the dark ocean, not knowing if solid ground lies ahead. Therefore, the first step is to honor the psychological death. Do not try to fix anything now. Do not try to be functional, productive, optimistic. You are in mourning. Mourning for who you were, for who you pretended to be, for who can no longer continue to exist. Write farewell letters to your old roles. Acknowledge how much they served you. Thank them. And then, let go. This farewell is not a symbolic gesture. It is a concrete action that allows the unconscious to know that you are willing to move on. The second step is to create space for the unknown. The conditioned mind will seek immediate fulfillment, more content, more people, more answers. But Jung warned, we cannot change anything until we accept it. And accepting means enduring the void, staying silent, sitting with the restlessness, not trying to resolve it, just listening to it. It is in the silent space that the new begins to emerge. But for that, you need to silence the noise, including your own hurry. The third step is to pay attention to subtle signs. Now that you have entered the fertile field of transformation, synchronicities, dreams, and sensations will intensify. Start a synchronicity journal. Note the patterns. Listen to your dreams. Ask them, what is dying in me? What is trying to be born? When the unconscious realizes that you are willing to listen, it speaks louder, it shows the way, but only if you show a willingness to follow. And finally, act, even without total clarity. This is essential. The psyche in transformation needs gesture, body, movement. Do not wait to have all the answers to begin. Take a symbolic step. A conversation you have been postponing, a closure you have been avoiding, a yes or a no that represents your emerging truth. Small acts create powerful openings. They tell the unconscious, I am going, even with fear, even without a map. But then what? What happens when you start to act? When you let the old die and begin to walk, not knowing who you will be? How to deal with the void between identities, with the time of limbo, with the reconstruction of the self. This is what we will see in the next and final part. Because your turning point is not an end. It is the beginning of something your soul has been longing for a long time. There comes a moment when there is nowhere left to run. No more excuses, no effective distractions, no convincing justifications. When the turning point truly arrives, everything within you begins to crumble. What made sense no longer does. What moved you no longer inspires. And even the image you built of yourself starts to collapse under the weight of your own denial. But this, as devastating as it may seem, is not the end. It is the clearest sign that you are about to be reborn. Carl Jung said that we do not choose our turning points. They emerge from the depths of the psyche when we have completely exhausted the possibility of growth within our current life configuration. You do not decide the moment, but you decide what you will do with it. Will you resist? Will you try to keep the old alive even though it is already dead? Will you cling to the known even if it means sinking with it? Or will you have the courage to walk through the door that your soul has opened? This door does not lead to easy answers, nor to quick solutions. It leads you down an uncomfortable, demanding path, but one that is profoundly transformative. The turning point is the beginning of the individuation process, the process of becoming what you truly are, beyond expectations, conditioning, and wounds. But this is only possible when you stop fighting against the process and start walking with it. Transformation does not happen with clarity. It happens with trust. Trust in something you do not yet understand, but that, in some way, you already recognize. If you felt that this video spoke directly to you, do not ignore it. This is already part of synchronicity. The message you needed to hear has arrived, and if it has arrived, it is because you already know, on some deep level, that you can no longer continue as you are. And you do not need to have everything figured out right now. What matters is accepting that the process has begun. Your old self is dying, the new is being gestated, and the space between these two is exactly where you are now. So, comment below, which part of this video caught your attention? Which phrase lingered in your mind? What truth have you been avoiding that you can no longer ignore? Share, because your vulnerability can open pathways for others who are also going through their turning point. And remember, this is just the beginning. The next video you will watch is just as important as this one. Keep watching, you are not alone, and the journey is just beginning. I'll see you there.